Okay, shalom. Right, this is a digitally remastered CGI picture that's been generated from a very famous icon of Yeshua. Okay, we're going to be having a look at something extraordinary today. So, shalom. Yeshua, Prince of the Face. Why is Yeshua mentioned in the Jewish prayer book? He's actually mentioned in the Rosh HaShanah prayer book. We will get to that. Okay, but like I say, this is a phenomenal face. To me, it's just divine providence that this has been recently computer generated. Especially that it's been generated from a very famous icon of Jesus. We've got to transform the way that we are used to seeing Yeshua and present him in a way that is acceptable to our Jewish brothers and sisters. And I think this teaching that is coming up is an incredible way in order to accomplish that. Lesson objectives. Come, let us reason together. So these are always the overall. Start off every lesson with these overall objectives. Come, let us reason together. You know, we've got to learn from one another basically, and we've got to learn how to reason and debate to get to the truth that sometimes the lies we've all inherited conceal. Come, let us debate, says YHWH. It's got a square ordinal of 1832. Which, and this is very appropriate for today, is 2 times, and a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse or Yishai. So that's 916. Obviously 2 times 916, 1932. So we can see there's a direct relationship between the shoot that shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse. This, like I say, is very important in today's lesson. Just to point out again, Joseph made himself known. 643, that's the ordinal, regular and ordinal of come now let us debate, says YHWH. And then may his name be erased in his memory, which relates to this. Joseph made himself known, which relates to this. But then there's a double connection here because 764 is exactly the same as the regular. This is the regular and the ordinal added together is exactly the same as, and a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse. Who's the spring that shall the shoot that shall spring forth from Jesse? It's the one who had his name erased and his memory. Yimach Shemo Zikro. Okay, so let's go and have a look at today's specific objectives. What the questions we're going to hopefully answer. Who came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel? How are the one who came and the root of Yishai, Jesse, connected? How does this connect to all the major messianic concepts to reveal who Moshiach is? What does the Rosh HaShanah prayer book reveal to us about Yeshua? Why is there mention? Sorry if that's spelt wrong. Why is there mention to Yeshua, the Prince of the Face? I should have put why is there mention to Yeshua, the Prince of the Face. Let's just correct that. Okay, so I've corrected that now. Why is there mention of Yeshua, the Prince of the Face? Very interesting. This is absolutely incredible stuff. So how is Yeshua, Sar HaPanim, Yeshua, Prince of the Face? That's how you say it in Hebrew. Yeshua, Sar HaPanim, Prince of the Face. Or the face, actually plural, Prince of the Faces. Connected to, how is this, Yeshua Sar HaPanim, connected to the curtain in the Holy Temple? Who and what does the concept of the curtain relate to? We've come across this loads in my teachings. Okay, I have talked about the curtain in the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple, loads, and who that specifically relates to, or certainly an aspect of the curtain is related to a particular woman, Sarach Asha. We will come to that though, however, in this lesson. So this is the Machzor, the Rosh HaShanah prayer book. And right when you start to blow the shofar, so this is the shofar blasts that are blown, and it's telling them what type of shofar blasts to blow. And this is Tekiah, Shevarim, Tekiah, Tekiah. Okay, so, and then you say a little prayer in between. And then you start blowing the next round of shofar blasts. So this is Tekiah, Shevarim, Tekiah. Okay, and so it goes forth. And then you've got this actual box here where there's a prayer. Yehi ratzon milefanecha, Yod He Wahweh Elohai Welohai Avothai, and that's when it's got a double yod like that. It's an abbreviated form of Yod He Wahweh. It's used very commonly. It's used throughout prayer books and things like that. But then you've got this here at the end of it. We'll get to a translation in a minute, but that highlighted. And I've taken this image off an actual website that's talked about this. If you typed in Yeshua Sar HaPanim, you could maybe find the website that I got this off. But it's very clear there. Were Yeshua Sar HaPanim, and Yeshua, Prince of the Faces, were Sar Metatron, and the Prince Metatron. First of all is, however, Ad Yad Eliyahu Zachor Latov, by the hand of Eliyahu, who is remembered for good, and Yeshua, Sar HaPanim, Yeshua, Prince of the Face, and Sar Metatron. Okay, so this is right at the height of service within Judaism. You know, Rosh HaShanah, the blowing of the Shofar, we're commanded to hear the blowing of the Shofar. It's a very, very, very profound and intense moment within the whole cycle of the year. It's the beginning of the year. You know, and you're remembering things like the Ekeda, the offering of Yitzchak. All these are commemorated on this day. It's a very, very holy day. And you know, you're going through, and it's a massive, massive order of prayer on Rosh HaShanah. You know, you're in the synagogue a long time getting through the prayers, because there's some very extended prayers that you've got to get through. And then it's Judgment Day. You've got to remember your family, Yikzor, and things like that. And you know, it's the day also in Shul where there's the most people that visit the Shul on that particular day. Of all the festivals, that is the day where where everybody will turn up. You know, the Shul sometimes has to give tickets out because there's not enough places in the Shul, because so many people turn up and unexpected people turn up. So, very, very busy day, and yet this is the time where they mention on that day Yeshua Sar HaPanim. Okay, so in part of the commentary referring to this as mentioned this verse. This is one of the verses that I came across in terms of commentary on this concept of Yeshua Sar HaPanim, Yeshua Prince of the Face. So this is in context who is coming from Bozrah. This is from Isaiah 63:7. In all their trouble he did not trouble them, and the angel of his presence, or the angel of his face, saved them. With his love and with his pity he redeemed them, and he bore them and he carried them all the days of old. Okay, so just to bear in mind, I aren't going to do a gematria, a numerical analysis of that particular verse, but the things that I am going to look at, really, the gematria in all this is extraordinary. And this is commentary based on this here. He did not trouble them. He did not trouble them according to their deeds, that they deserved to suffer. For the angel of his presence, i.e., this is the commentary, Michael, the prince of the presence of those who minister before him, save them always as an agent of the omnipresent. Okay, so in various places you've got different code names within Judaism and within the commentary. They're obviously not going to use Yeshua, but they do use the concept of the Archangel Michael and the concept of the Meta-Archangel, Metatron. And they usually, when you're reading between the lines, what they're referring to, there's a massive connection between Michael, and Metatron within the esoteric teachings to be found within Judaism. What they're actually referring to in a lot of cases is very much connected to the concept of Yeshua, Moshiach ben Yosef. Okay, so we have to analyse that and go into detail, much more fuller, because clearly at some level, a very, very, very high level indeed, high enough in order to be able to put the prayer book together. And these were the great rabbis that only had the authority to put the actual prayer books together. So some connection has been made at that very esoteric level to the concept of Michael Metatron, obviously, Eliyahu, and then Yeshua Sar HaPanim. Yeshua, Prince of the Face. Okay. And then this is this translated. Okay, it says, may it be your will before you. It's not an exact translation, actually. It says, may it be your will before you. YHWH, and then it's YHWH, our God and the God of our forefathers, that the sounding of the Tasrhat, that's the order of the this is the order of the blowing of the trumpet, like Tekiah, Shevarim, Tekiah, that we blow will be woven into the curtain by the hand of the minister Tartiel, like the name that was received by the hand of Eliyahu, his memory be for a blessing, and Yeshua, the Prince of the Face, and the Prince Metatron, and may you be filled with mercy for us. Blessed are you, Master of Mercies. Okay. And this has been taken from a website called 13 Petals. That's where I got that translation from. So, a brilliant article, by the way, that I do suggest you go and have a look. Now we need to go and have a look what this is all about. So, as we can see, this is an actual prayer that's prayed on Rosh HaShanah, in between the blowing of the trumpets, the blowing of the actual shofar blasts. They're highly Kabbalistic in themselves, now it's highly esoterical, and that's why you've got mention of all these different angels that you're not actually supposed to pronounce. However, for teaching purposes, we are allowed to. It's all very interesting, it's all very technical, and I'm going to break it down to make sure we are aware conceptually of what is before us and link that up to some of the major concepts that I've already gone through in my teaching. What is this all about? How do we understand it clearly? Why is it there? What's the purpose of it being there? And what can we understand as a consequence of it being there? We can understand one thing, that the great sages of old knew exactly who Yeshua was. Okay, so this is a verse that I'm going to use to demonstrate the whole concept of how Yeshua is, the whole concept of Yeshua, Moshiach ben Yosef, at this time in exile. Okay, how he appears to us who were within his camp, and how he appears to others who are not within his camp. Okay, so, and he came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, and there were the clouds and the darkness, and it illuminated the night, and one did not draw near the other at all. So, from a Rashi, for example, the commentary of Rashi is going to highlight the fact that and there were the cloud and the darkness. This is referring to the side of the Egyptians. So for them, he came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, and there were the cloud and the darkness. That's what was seen on the side from Egyptian perspective. And who were the Egyptians? What is the main influence within Judaism at this time? Erev Rav. Who were the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude who came up out of Egypt? Okay, so they've got Egyptian influences. They're in the camp of Egypt, basically. They're exiled into a camp of Egypt. So he, Yeshua, who is the one that comes between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, appears like cloud and darkness to them. And it illuminated the night, and one did not draw near the other all night long. Night is referred to. It's one of the words used to describe exile. So during exile, one camp does not draw near to the other. So some people looking at Yeshua and see nothing but cloud and darkness because they're outside the camp. And then there's those who are part of the camp of Yeshua, and to those that are part of that camp, he is the illumination of the night. He illuminates the whole camp during the exile, unless we decide, because we become too arrogant, to step outside that camp and become like influenced by Edomite influence, which is sadly often what has happened. And then unfortunately outside of the camp, he becomes just like an idol. Okay. So we've got this wonderful image, and I recently did a Facebook post, and I'm going to read it out to you. I don't really normally do my personal Facebook post, but I just wanted to put a point over because this whole concept is very highly Kabbalistic. You know, it's where we get the concept of the other side from, Sitra Achra. You know, there's obviously a holy side, and then there's an unholy side. And when we are filled full of ego, and that ego is fueled by exilic mindsets like Edomite exile, Ishmaelite exile, Erev Rav exile. I talk about them nearly every lesson. Once we have got elitism and ego as part of the religion that we have inherited, then we start to experience what's called the other side. The other side of holiness. We can only come before YHWH humbly. He will only accept us into his presence when we are humble. And, you know, these exilic states of mind, including the concept of Egypt, which is another form of exile, that's when our ego dominates over our soul, or arrogance dominates over our humility. And because our arrogance dominates over our humility, we then experience even holiness from the other side. So we can even experience something holy, and because we're experiencing it from the backside, what's called the Sitra Achra, the other side, it almost becomes something that punishes our ego. Because we're so attached to our ego, we think that it's something that's punishing us, you know. But it's not. It's just it's there to humble us. You know, we should in a holy way be humbled, like through seeking the truth and clinging to that truth. But sometimes we reject the truth, and in our arrogance we reject the truth, and then we start fighting against this thing we see as an enemy of ours, when in fact it's just like it's like the Fight Club. We're actually just fighting ourselves, because it's our own ego that's the problem. It's our own arrogance, it's our own lack of knowledge, it's our own lack of humility that's put us in a place where we are back to back with holiness itself. So there's a lot of people that see that are not face to face with Yeshua, and by not being face to face with Yeshua, they will see the backside instead, or they will see him from a very exiled state. They won't be within his camp, and they won't be very near to him, because they're not living the message, and they're not living his message, and they're not living in accordance to what he revealed that we should be doing during exile, i.e. being kind and being loving and being humble people. We get it wrong. Anyway, just let me read this, what I put on Facebook, and you sort of get the message where I'm coming from. Bearing in mind that most of my friends are Jewish friends, non-believing Jewish friends, you know, and I do get a lot of stick from people mocking my belief in Yeshua. A lot of my Jewish friends have actually abandoned me, you know, no longer friends with me. For people that have been friends with me a very long time, because I can't afford to pussyfoot around anymore. We've got to really hit the nail on the head and show them exactly the perspective that they are sitting in, and why they are suffering as a consequence of sitting in that place. And it's just a case of humbling yourself to accept the truth. And then suddenly this thing that is Sitra Achra, that's there to punish your ego and your arrogance, suddenly becomes an angel of, you know, like an angel, or the prince of the presence of the face of YHWH Himself. And I've put this: if you cannot see the love of YHWH shining back at you through this man's face, which is Yeshua, I'm not saying that this is actually how he looked. I'm not saying that at all. This is just symbolic of a you know, it's obviously it's a computer generated face, so it's not even a real man's face. It's literally computer generated out of an icon. That's why it's so special to me, because we've literally got to transform this icon, this false god that has been created during exile, into something that we can actually reveal the truth from. So if you cannot see the love of YHWH shining back at you through this man's face, you are looking from the backside. If you look so bad and repulsive from that perspective you choose to view it from, and if it appears as something other, that's Sitra Achra, the other side, something other than YHWH, that is your own false god you have placed before you. due to your arrogance. It looks so bad because it was intended that you do something about it. This article may help you a lot. If your ego is erupted by these words, let it act as a warning that your beliefs about Yeshua are not the truth. This is a phenomenal article for anyone who desires to draw close to the truth. Shabbat Shalom. So I wrote this on Friday. I'd put all the teaching together, and I'd been studying this, loads of different concepts, but I went onto this article. I'd read it before, I'd studied it before. I'm very aware of this concept of Yeshua, Sar HaPanim, in the Machzor. It's not for Yom Kippur, it's actually for the blowing of the trumpet. So there is a mistake in the title. It's for Rosh HaShanah. Okay, but that would get you to it. That would get you to the article. It's a phenomenal article. It's very technical in places. If you're not used to Kabbalah, you might not understand all of it. But there's something there for everybody, I'm sure. Let's go and have a look at the numbers then that point out very clearly this concept that's before us. You know, it's our ego that determines which camp we're in. Are we in the camp of the Egyptians, or are we in the camp of Israel? Because Israel represents the soul and Egypt represents the nations or our body. And depending on which we have got dominating at any one time in exile, it's usually our arrogance that dominates over our soul rather than our humility that dominating over our arrogance. That will determine which camp we're in, and that will determine how we see Yeshua. Okay, whether we see him in truth face to face as a revelation of YHWH's love for the entire of humanity or not. Let's continue then. So when he came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, and there was a cloud and the darkness, and it illuminated the night, and one did not draw near the other all night long. It's got some phenomenal numbers here. This is from Exodus 14:20. It's got a regular gematria of 3043 and a ordinal gematria of 694. Together they come to 3,737. So straight away we've got a really, really powerful number here, because 3,737 is 37 times 101, 37 being Yeshua. So Yeshua is the curse by which Yeshua is cursed within rabbinical Judaism. So the ordinal of that's 37. 101 is Michael. So straight away, two of the most powerful concepts when it comes to a revelation of Mashiach ben Yosef right there and then. A phenomenal number that. It really is in itself. So then we've got 3043 is 358 times 8.5. 358 is actually 17 times 179. We will come back to that, but 2 times 117 is 179 is 358. 358 is Moshiach. Okay, so straight away we've got a connection there. The Mispagadol 6,033, ordinal Mispagadol 750. Together they come to 6,783, which is 3 times 2,261. Really significant. This is going to link us up to the verse about the root of Yishai, Jesse, and then 21 times 323. So there's loads to look at. Really very significant numbers. We want to start to know, well, what if this verse is so significant and it's related in some way to the concept of Yeshua Sar HaPanim, what is it got? What can it tell us in the whole concept? We've got to conceptually understand what's happening. Where are we? Which camp are we in? And what determines which camp we are in? Because clearly it's to do with not just who we think we are in terms of whose seed we are born of, because it's all been muddled up to a certain degree, but what's the dominant force within us? Is the dominant force within us humility, or is the dominant force within us arrogance? Because that's going to basically determine how you see anything holy in this world. You know, how you see anything holy. Are you seeing it in a face-to-face relationship, or are you seeing it back-to-back? You know, because some very, very holy things from the back look very, very unholy. Okay, and this is what we want. We want to draw ourselves into a face-to-face relationship with Yeshua, Sar HaPanim. Because why? Because we want to see radiating from his face the very love of YHWH. We don't want this, we don't want to suffer the backside of that revelation, i.e. All the suffering as a consequence of the way we see Yeshua during exile from the place of being within the camp of Egypt, because you can read on a few verses from here to find exactly what happens to those Egyptians. Okay. There's a connection straight away. I haven't come across this number in all the analysis that I've done, thousands of pages of analysis. I've never come across this number, only in this one instance, the 694. I've probably come across factors of it, I would say, but I didn't even bother analysing it. The only one that I came across was this. And this is actually taken from the New Testament. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Shabbat day. Okay, so I've analysed this before, because there is a concept about Yeshua being the master of the Shabbat. And there's lots of debate, especially within Torah-keeping believers in Yeshua, as to what the actual calendar is, because obviously they find it difficult to just accept the current Jewish calendar. The current Jewish calendar is basically a Babylonian calendar to all intents and purposes, and it is not actually Torah based, but they did have the authority to change it. So the whole calendar does come as a big issue and a big division between the Jewish people and the lost house of Yosef, for definite. And apparently, I've never found the source for it, but apparently that this was one of the issues that caused division originally between Yehuda and the tribes of Yosef, the tribes of Ephraim and Yisrael. That was one of the issues that created a division, issues regarding the calendar, the biblical calendar. So I think it's quite important. Sometimes, instead of seeing, we've got to transcend the things that divide, and try and instead create a unity between brothers, between Yehuda and Yosef, despite very significant differences of opinion, like i.e. what is the actual biblical calendar. It cannot get more critical than that. It cannot get more critical than that. And one thing for sure, the current situation, neither house has got it right completely. We should yearn for the truth to be revealed regarding the calendar, and only Moshiach ben Dawid has the authority to do that. So 694. Okay, you can meditate and read into it whatever you want, but this word here, 913, which is the Mispar Gadol regular times 7, 6,391 is 913 times 7. 913 is Bereshith, the very first word of Torah. So it says the end is wedged in the beginning. So if this represents the beginning in some way, go right back to the beginning and use this as a guide in forming positive relationships between the house of Yehuda and the house of Yosef. You're going to have to ignore the calendar. You're going to have to ignore the calendar. It can't be an issue which causes division any longer. You've got to unite despite the differences between the house, and even the differences within the house of Yosef. I have really good friends. I've put, I've made it very clear the position that I take regarding the calendar that I personally follow. I just follow the calendar of the Jewish people, because as far as I can see, they have got the most authority when it comes to the calendar that they follow, because it was the calendar that they follow was brought into practice with the authority of the Sanhedrin, Hillel II. Okay, so nobody can boast such a level of authority regarding another calendar as far as I'm aware. Okay, it's a long, complicated issue. Basically, this is telling us we're going to have to transcend those issues for the sake of his name to be revealed, and for the sake of the name of YHWH to be revealed, and the sake of unity between brothers. Then you've got this Metatron. Okay, so we've heard a lot about the concept of Metatron, which is a code name for the seventh day. Why do we know that? Well, Metatron has got 6 letters in the name Metatron, and this is called the lesser YHWH, and it's also, according to Arizal, Metatron is related very much to the 6 days. Those 6 letters of his name are related to the 6 days of creation. Okay, obviously the 6 days are bigger and above Metatron, but this just goes to show, this is letting us know that this code name that's used, Metatron, within esoteric Kabbalistic teachings, we're not talking about a small concept, we're not talking about even an archangel, we're talking about a meta-archangel and an entire system with which YHWH operates to reveal himself. Okay. Metatron is Metatron, but spelt with an additional yod. Okay, and there are big distinctions to be made. Obviously, if it's got an additional yod, it's no longer 6 letters, it's 7 letters. So if we know that Metatron with 6, that symbolises the 6 days, somehow Metatron is related to the 7th day, the final Shabbat. And in another teaching that I do about the whole concept of the 8th day and things like that, I go across this in a little bit more detail, but what I've just spoken should suffice. So we're talking about the reign of Moshiach ben Dawid, the Messiah, son of David, and that will occur in the 7th millennium, okay, which is symbolic of the 7th day of creation, which is the Shabbat, where we rest and we have got the peace and there's unity between heaven and earth. You know, the 6 days represent, you know, our mundane activities to rectify the whole of creation. The 7th day is rest. Obviously, we don't transcend mundanity, but we elevate it up to a level of holy where the soul dominates over the body. Okay, but it's still a body. So that's the 7th day. And it's connected to, if Metatron is connected to what's called the lesser YHWH, Metatron is being connected to the concept of the greater YHWH, a higher revelation of the name YHWH, basically. And I've talked about the 2 revelations of YHWH, the one that is revealed through Moshe and the one revealed through Yeshua. And the one YHWH, the revelation through Yeshua, is a higher level of revelation. It's the level of revelation at Tekiah. It's above the Torah. It's not limited in any way. It's just completely all merciful. Whereas the one revealed, the name YHWH is revealed within the letter of the Torah, is what you could call a lesser revelation. Okay, and then so if you add the name for Metatron for YHWH and David together, the square ordinals of all those names, so 1063 for Metatron, 168, that's for David, and that's David corrected when he also has an additional yod. You know, many times in the Tanakh, David is spelt with it's Daleth Vav Daleth, but there are many times when it's spelt with additional yod, and it says that this is when David is rectified. So it's Daleth Vav Yod Daleth, and it's Dawid. Okay, so slightly different spelling, but that's David rectified. I talk about that all the time in my teachings. So square ordinal of that's 168, and then the square ordinal for YHWH is 186. If we add them up together, it comes to 1417, and that's the concept of the master of the Shabbat. Is connected to the concept of the master of the Shabbat. Yeshua says, I am the master of the Shabbat. Basically, he's saying, I am above the level of the Shabbat. I'm not under the Torah, I'm above the Torah. It's like the Shabbat was made for man, not man for the Shabbat. It's just taking us from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. And that distance between the bottom of the mountain and the top of the mountain, where the cloud is at the top of the mountain, the distance in between is equivalent to Metatron. It's equivalent to the ladder that is called in esoteric teachings Metatron. And also bearing in mind, it's equivalent to the entire distance of the mountain. I've spoke about this before. The actual word used for the bottom of the mountain, when the children of Israel stood at the bottom of the mountain, when they were receiving the Torah, the word is actually Tahath, which means under the mountain. They were under the mountain, and they sort of had it dangled over them, and almost in a threatening way, like accept this or suffer. So it was almost a gunshot wedding, if you like. But they had to accept the Torah as at Sinai from the bottom of the mountain, and it's for us to make that journey up to the top of the mountain, where Moshe received the Torah is at the top of the mountain. Okay, so there's a difference, and that difference is what you would call Mount Sinai, and Mount Sinai comes to 130, and it's got the same gematria as Sulam, ladder, i.e. the ladder from heaven to earth that Yaakov saw, with the angels of the exile going up and down, and the name of YHWH was at the top of the ladder. Okay, so that ladder in the Zohar is referred to as Metatron. So we've got to battle against all these forces of exile, and talked about it before. And whilst we're battling against all these forces of exile, it's like almost a concept of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The Torah is like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So this is good, this is evil. And I've talked about this concept so many times, I'm not going to go over it now. But basically we've got to get to the top of the ladder. We've got to get from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. We've got to transcend all these exilic forces, and we've got to battle against all these exilic forces and we've got to get up and up and up and up and up the ladder until we get right to the top. What's at the top? The name YHWH. Okay, so at the top of the ladder is YHWH, and that's the actual place where we receive the true Torah, not at the bottom. That's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What's at the top of the ladder is the tree of life, the name YHWH. That's where we get to see him face to face, and that's why Yeshua is so important, because really at the top of the ladder is we can't see YHWH himself face to face, but certainly through the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef we can see YHWH face to face. Okay, we can see his love for humanity face to face. We can see his compassion for humanity face to face. We can see his grace, and his kindness, and his mercy, and his forgiveness. We can see all these things face to face. We can't see him literally face to face, because to do so we would die. So all these concepts, the things that I've gone over and over many, many times, what we need to immerse ourselves into that, to those concepts, so that we don't get stuck on that ladder, Metatronic ladder, thinking they're over there are good, they're bad. If I do this, I'm good. If I do this, I'm bad. You've got to get over yourself. You've got to get over yourself, and you've got to get over all the provocations that exilic mindsets create for your ego. So like if they provoke your ego into thinking that somehow you are better than somebody else because you believe this or because you do this, you're going to be stuck on a certain rung of the ladder. There comes a point where you've got to let go of yourself and get up that ladder, get all the way up. And if you don't feel like you're face to face with YHWH in your life because you're stuck on a ladder that you need to ascend, you sometimes need to let go of big parts of yourself in order to get up that top ladder, i.e., you've got to forgive people that you might have been hurt by. You've got to ask for forgiveness for those that you've been hurt by. You've got to be charitable. You've got to be kind. You've got to be at least acting in accordance to the revelation of the name YHWH in your life, because one thing for sure, that's going to bring you to a place of humility. And like I say, that puts you on the right side of the camp. That puts you in the camp of Israel, not in the camp of Egypt. And all these are code names for, are you governed by your ego, or are you governed by your soul in humility? And YHWH is humble, by the way. In his greatness and his exaltedness, he chooses to suffer with us all the time we are in exile. He never departs from us. That's how humble he is. We're not aware of it, but he is. This is quite interesting. It's got the 323 now. And the bones of Joseph with the children of Israel had brought up out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt, 323. So that was with them, wasn't it? Within the camp of Israel, they had the bones of Joseph. Moses would refuse to leave Egypt. He couldn't leave Egypt because Joseph had made the children of Israel swear to take his bones up out of Egypt. It's gone on a lot about the whole process of how Moses managed to get the bones up out of the river Nile because of all the necromancy and all the, the Egyptian magic that had tried to entrap the bones of Joseph into the river Nile, and all that Moshiach had to do in order to draw those bones up out of the water. And who was he with when he accomplished this? He was with Sar HaPanim, this very mysterious woman that I talk about a lot. Right, so 323 is very much connected to this. Okay, and this is another significant number. The Mispar Gadol of and the bones of Joseph which the children of Israel brought up. The Mispar Gadol regular and the Mispar Gadol ordinal. Okay, come to 3,436, which is 4 times 859. 859 is the regular and ordinal of Yeshua HaMashiach. It's all connected. And then you've got death swallowed up eternally. So really, when you get to the top of that ladder and you are face to face with the source of life itself, the name YHWH is shining back at you from the face of Yeshua Sar HaPanim, Master, Prince of the Face. Okay, once you get up that ladder, and that number there, that's 731. I've pointed this out loads. That's Yeshua and Moshe put together. So you've got to almost form a ladder with those two, haven't you? You've got, like a ladder is one stick, one major horizontal stick isn't a vertical stick, and another major vertical stick, and sort of little rungs in between. Well, if one side's Moshe, the other side's Yeshua, and together you're going to be able to get up that ladder. 731 is Moshe and Yeshua put together, 345 and 386. I can't write absolutely everything down because I won't have enough room, so death swallowed up eternally is very much related to that number, 731. There's other things that's related to. The whole concept of the rectified Hame'oroth, the regular 658, plus the ordinal of that, I think it's 73. Adding together, they come to 731. Okay, which is again Moshe and Yeshua, the luminaries rectified, and it's also Melech Yisrael. The regular and order of Melech Yisrael, the King of Israel, comes to 731, and all kinds of other things that are really major important that require a unity between Moshe, the name that's revealed through Moshe, and the name that's revealed through Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, and then this is a really just wait a minute, I'll just go correct it. Okay, it had a missing lamed off it. Le yabasha, sorry, to dry, as in it's really the dry land. Okay, and this is obviously when they came out of Mitzrayim, Egypt, they went across the Red Sea on dry land. Okay, this is the exact word to describe that. They went across on dry land. Okay, it's 347 plus 50 equals 397. It's really the 50th level as well. There you go, you've got 50, as in the 50th level. 50th level means face to face. There's 49 levels of understanding. Moshe reached the 49th level. Then there's 49 levels of impurity, what we suffer in exile, and those 49 levels are 49, they're synonymous with 49 sicknesses. The 49 levels of impurity which separate us from the face of YHWH. Okay, from being able to perceive YHWH face to face, we are sick. because we, through our sin, have caused ourselves to be distanced from the source of life and our healer and our saviour, who is YHWH, and the provision that is made for his healing and his salvation to be manifest in physical reality. A lot that's through Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, so we're in a level of impurity during exile that we need to be healed from. The provision for the healing is the suffering servant Yeshua HaMashiach, okay, who bears our sicknesses for us. He's the remedy also for our sicknesses. He's like the serpent on the staff lifted up in the wilderness that we look at, okay, and we're able to be healed from the bite of the serpent, from the delusion that our ego poisons us with. Okay, so all these things are highly messianic. So the 50th level is face to face, where we understand that the suffering of the righteous. The 49th level is to understand everything regarding YHWH. But the reason why Moshe didn't understand the 50th level, because he couldn't comprehend why the righteous suffer. Okay, through Yeshua we're able to attain that 50th level. Why? Because he suffered for us to have life. Okay, so he chose to humble himself and enter exile with us, and he suffers with us until we are healed. He bears our sicknesses with us. He's a provision for our sicknesses. And so in Hebrew, sickness is 49. It's chole, 49. So they're the 49 levels of impurity that we need to be healed from, the 49 sicknesses that we need to be healed from. Okay, and our healing brings us into, instead of being in a state of descent, we're healed, and then, parallel to that, or opposite that, are the 49 levels of understanding, where we draw ever closer to the name YHWH. The 50th level of understanding, when we understand the suffering of the righteous, i.e. we're able to understand that through what's been accomplished through the suffering of Yeshua, who was perfectly righteous, and the suffering of Moshiach ben Yosef, who's called also a tzaddik, and the whole, how that is the foundation of the entire world. That brings us face to face with YHWH. Okay, that takes us up to the 50th level. Okay, Eretz is connected to Malkuth kingdom. Okay, this dry land can be seen as a code for Mashiach. Incorporating everything I've just spoken. The 397 plus the square ordinal comes to this here, 2011. And 2011 time is related to this number. 3 times 2011 is 633. So we can see as well that whole concept, 50th level, is the humility to accept we're in exile and we need healing. And what provision YHWH is made for our healing? Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay. And if we want to attain face to face, we're going to have to accept in one way or another the provision YHWH has made for us to attain healing and salvation from exile, and the way that we are able to perceive YHWH face to face. Like I say, we can't literally perceive him face to face, as we would die, but to perceive him in the way that he has provided us for us to perceive him face to face. Okay, it's Yeshua HaMashiach, and that sometimes in a lot of instances takes a great amount of humility. And certainly we can believe in Yeshua, we can access nearness to the concept of Yeshua, we can receive a certain level of salvation, a certain level of healing from the sicknesses that exile has inflicted upon us, the sickness of our arrogance. But we can be like dogs that return to vomit and pigs that go roll in mud. We can, even though we've experienced a massive cleansing of humility, we can still return to our vomit. We can go back to our arrogant former ways. And we can there's no way we can miss a rung on the ladder. You've got to go systematically all the way up to the top. You could have a divine elevation by the grace of YHWH. It's possible to enter into face-to-face relationship with YHWH by sheer favour, by a sheer act of grace. And I've spoken about this a lot. That is usually how it's revealed. Okay. Let's have a look. So we've got a massive opponent for all this, called Amalek. So if you are not attached to the reality and the truth of what YHWH was accomplished through Moshiach ben Yosef, Yeshua Mashiach, guess what? You will be looking at that from the backside, and from the backside it looks a lot like Amalek. Okay? So it will be doubt in some form, and Amalek manifests physically. That doubt manifests physically, usually takes the form of Nazis. That's why people who have failed to be able to accept the truth regarding Yeshua, because they've been shepherded by evil shepherds, by the way. They've been shepherded by evil shepherds who have controlled and manipulated the children of Israel with Erev Rav indoctrination since Moshe died, which is 3,294 years ago, I do believe. So we've got a long time. This exile has had a powerful, powerful, powerful influence on the Jewish people and preventing them from accessing divine reality and truth. And as a consequence of that evil shepherding, they've suffered Amalek. It's an horrific truth. It's an horrific truth that they have suffered Amalek. And usually Amalek, we're talking about those in the camp of Israel, being those who are humble. It's usually people who have taken this truth and been like dogs that return to vomit and go back to the arrogant, elitist ways, feelings of false sense of superiority, people who start to judge themselves as superior and others as inferior, and instead of taking on the role of disciples of Yeshua, they become something opposite and other than him, and usually they fulfill the role of Amalek. So when Jews are saying the Christians are nothing but Amalekites, well, the Jews that are suffering from this are usually quite arrogant, pumped up full of Erev Rav indoctrination, and it's the ones that have fallen out of the camp of Israel, fallen out of have become arrogant, have been like dogs that have returned to the vomit and gone back with and become Amalek in this world, dressed up as Amalek. It's just a sad tragedy. This is what happens in exile. We're in exile. The forces of exile are very real, and we have to work very hard to humble ourselves and overcome them, get up that ladder. I'm just going to tell you a story, because this is psychologically something that you can apply. I were in a situation where I needed to go through a massive, massive, massive healing process. And, just felt so afflicted and so sick. I was ill, and a lot of it was mental illness and things like that. Just really, really severe stuff, anxiety and post-traumatic shock, a lot of trauma and things like that. And I had to go systematically, go through a healing process and just heal these symptoms that I was suffering from. And I tried to do it in as holistic way as possible. I never took pharmaceutical medication. I looked to plants and other alternate therapies, and took a long time to bring about that healing. But the healing has remained. That is the difference. A real healing, that's what I would say, without any addiction other than chocolate. Unfortunately, I've still got that mountain to climb. But what I'm saying is that all this healing that we go through, I listened to this psychologist, and it was this woman. It was all on trauma psychology and things like that. It was some really wonderful stuff. I'd actually worked as part of my career. I'd been an accountant, and I actually worked for one of the world's leading crisis psychologist centres. And I learnt a lot then when I were with them. But this particular psychologist, I listened to a video on YouTube at some point. I were really very poorly, and I were really very desperate and really needed help. And she said, "You are in hell." She wasn't talking to me personally, obviously. It was just a teaching that she'd put out there. She says, "You are in hell and I am at the top. There's a ladder in between." She says, "And I can guide you up that ladder, but the ladder is hot." And she says, "And you are just going to have to find your way and find the strength to get up the ladder, even when it's hot and it hurts you. You have to get out of the situation that you're in. And that's a little bit like sometimes healing, isn't it? Especially psychological healing, when you've got to sort of like go and confront all your inner demons from, way back when in your past that have just been haunting you ever since. If you don't deal with them properly, and if you don't heal from all these former traumas and stuff like that, and it is a very painful healing. Sometimes can be a painful experience. Getting up that ladder can be painful, and you just get up one rung and you just think, I just cannot go any further. I cannot go any further at all. And I know when I set off on my healing journey, one of the things that I was saying to myself is, I may not even finish it in this lifetime. I am so messed up. I have got so many issues now that I've been building up, for the last 45 years of my life, or 40 years of my life for a fact. What am I going to do with it all? I don't think I can even repair this damage in one lifetime. There was a phrase from Tekiah that came to me in it, where we are not. It was Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the former chief rabbi of the UK. It was his mantra, if you like, his leading catchphrase he put on everything. And it is not for us to complete the task, but now that are we absolved from it. And it's taken from Tekiah, Ethics of the Fathers, from the Mishnah. And that really what came to me. I thought, I might not get to the top of the ladder. I might not get there. That's a reality. I've got so many layers of problems to deal with that I just have to literally just start to untangle them one at a time and deal with them as best as I possibly can, get the best help possible, the best holistic help possible, humble myself to go to the doctors and all these self-help groups and stuff like that, and just go through a healing process as best as I can. And actually in doing that, in healing my body, it liberated my soul from, my soul was enslaved in my own body, that was enslaved to the sicknesses of exile, that usually bear a greater burden on our mind than what they do on our bodies. But you affect somebody's mind and you affect somebody's body also. So you usually end up with physiological problems as well as psychological problems. The two go hand in hand. We don't really have a body and mind. The two are one. That's what psychologists nowadays tell you. So you are definitely going to suffer from physiological symptoms as well as psychological symptoms. So it was just going through this whole healing process. So to me, that is parallel in a way with the whole concept of that ladder of Metatron. We've got to learn how to heal from the influence of exile, however it has impressed the evil within us, however it has tormented us, and however it has separated us from YHWH. We've got to go through that healing process. And it also links up to the whole concept of the Mashiach. There's a concept within Talmudic Judaism which says that where is Mashiach? Mashiach is in the gates of Rome, banding up his bandages one by one, just in case he's called. It's this concept that he just bandages up his bandages one by one because he just might be called today. So if he takes all his bandages off in one go, he won't be able to come immediately. He'll be just stuck there with all his wounds open and a big pile of bandages. And this is they've left us a brilliant analogy for how we actually deal with the trauma that we all face and the sicknesses that we all face, one by one. You've got to think in terms of holistic healing, like whole body healing, body and mind healing, but you can only really deal with one sickness at a time. Anything more is too much. So it's like that whole concept of just one bandage at a time. You just have to slow things down, and you just have to think realistically, how well are you? How much of this healing process do you have to endure? And it's a great inspiration to remind us that the Mashiach, all the time we are unwinding our bandages in order to heal ourselves of the afflictions of exile. Mashiach is right there with us bandages his own wounds, which are our wounds, he's taken upon himself. And we can draw inspiration that in the depth of our suffering, he is with us. 100%, he couldn't be anywhere else. And every day we suffer, he is suffering with us, if not more. But he's also that voice within us saying, get up that ladder. Get up that ladder. I am suffering with you, but I want to live through you too. You know, so when we get up and we see that Yeshua's, somebody was on this post that I posted on Facebook, one of the comments was, because I'd put, this is the love of YHWH smiling back at us, the face of Yeshua, and you see how beautiful that face is. It's a beautiful, even though it's computer generated, it's still a beautiful image. And I'm thinking, and he put, one of my friends had put, you know, basically is the, you know, is the suffering of the whole, I see his face as the suffering of every homeless person I've ever seen and things like that. And I says, well, really, he's got two visages, and he's got, where he's with us in our suffering. But the more we heal from that suffering and that lowliness and that brokenness of exile, the more we go up that ladder and heal, so too his face heals that shines back at us, till eventually we reach full healing. And what is the face then that's looking back at us? It's not this broken, bandaged Mashiach suffering in the gates of Rome, imprisoned in the gates of Rome. No, is Yeshua Sar HaPanim, the Prince of the Face. And what face is representing the name YHWH? That's what face. And as we heal, so too his visage heals. It says, you know, his visage has been mad more than any other man. We've got to repair that, haven't we? We are his opportunity to heal, so that that light that he desires to shine out even gets an opportunity to shine out in our own lives, because we're healed people. We're not subject to the force of evil. We're not subject to the force of exile, and we're not arrogant people. We're healed people. We don't need to be arrogant, do we? Because we're humbled by the whole process, that there's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. He's just that just radiates and permeates our entire existence. So what have we got to be arrogant about? Absolutely nothing. Okay, so we don't need to get dressed up in Amalek because we've fallen out of the camp. We're doing what we're meant to be doing. We're healing ourselves in order to be reach that pinnacle where we're able to look face to face at Yeshua Sar HaPanim in the name of YHWH face to face. Okay, so this is now how it's connected to the whole concept. Look at this. It's just utter perfection. We see utter perfection in these numbers. It says, and a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse, Yishai, and a twig shall sprout from his roots. Isaiah 11:1, 2261. There we go, look. Directly connected to this whole concept. Okay, and it's connected in more ways than one, by the way, but it's just glorious to me. And then we've got this as well, 321, which is connected to all these, connected to here and here. YHWH shall grant strength to his people. YHWH shall bless his people with shalom. We all need that though, don't we? We all need that shalom, that peace between body and soul. We have suffered enough. We have definitely suffered enough. Right, so let's go and have a look at some more numbers then. So if we just take this bit here, and he came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, we've got some wonderful numbers. It's honestly, it's just never ending. I've said this before, when it comes to the revelation of Torah, you could go deeper and deeper and deeper. I have to stop myself from analysing. I have to just have a cut-off point, because there is literally no end to the revelation. It's an overflowing cup. You just literally to force yourself to move away, to just say, I've got enough in order to be able to share this with other people. So for everything that I've shown, which is glorious and wonderful, there's an endless flow of light available if we're just willing to receive it. But obviously, I mean, there's more than we could ever receive. It's an overflowing, endless flow of light. So we've just got to take what we can. So anyway, here, and he came between the camp of Egypt and camp of Israel. So that comes to 1,276. That is the regular, and 295 is the ordinal. Together come to 1,571. But look at this straight away, very significant. This is another major concept when it comes to Mashiach and it comes to the work of rectification. So the 6 days of work and then the 7th day of rest that then leads on to the concept of the 8th day, the world to come, where we totally transcend all physicality and mundanity and materiality, etc. So in the meantime, we've got to bring balance and harmony, shalom, between the divine male and the divine female. Okay, divine masculine aspect of creation, divine feminine aspect of creation. Okay, and then if we just even have a look at that, look how perfect that is. 474, that is da'ath. That's supernal da'ath, supernal knowledge, like man knows a woman. Adam knew Eve. Obviously we know what that means. Okay, so knowledge is very much connected to a harmony between peace between the masculine wisdom and the feminine understanding. The wisdom is like seen as the almost like a seminal shot of inspiration, and the understanding, the female, is the womb through which this is brought to a place of maturation, and da'ath knowledge is that balance between, the synthesis between. Okay, so again, male and female, it's all wonderful, like the tree of knowledge. There's so many things you can deep dive into that. But anyway, if we take, for example, the square ordinal of both, 1,192, plus the actual ordinal, so the square ordinal and the ordinal of male and female, Zachor Unkeva, Nukva, basically, the male and the Nukva, Zachor and the Nukva. It comes to 1,276. So we've got this whole, it's related to this whole concept, and this is even again, it's related to, male and female are like, Yisrael is the male, the light, the nations are the female. It's the light and the vessels, body and soul. It's Yaakov and Esav. There's so many code names within the Torah for this same phenomena, unity between masculine and feminine. Okay, because we are living in a level of consciousness where there's separation between male and female. At one level, there is absolutely no separation whatsoever. There is no distinction of terms like masculine, like opposites. But in this world, what we have to rectify, we've got to bring unity between two opposites, and that predominantly is expressed in the unity between male and female, husband and wife, etc. So we've got a work to do, haven't we? Okay, and that's connected to this whole concept of the one who came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. Okay, it's so that we did not serve this lower nature. We were separated from Egypt, which is like separated from slavery, where we're just serving our own egos for the sake of ourselves. We brought into a place called the camp of Israel. It's a place of redemption. We separated from that slave mentality so that we can serve YHWH to do what exactly? Well, to do what we were designed to do, bring unity between male and female for an ultimate purpose. There's an additional purpose on top of that. Okay, but so it's all about this unity ultimately reveals the name YHWH. So it's taken us from that place of slavery into a place of redemption in order for us to fulfill the actual purpose of creation itself. It's all beautifully and wonderfully connected. Right, and then you've got this, and man became a living soul. Okay, so we've got the Mispar Gadol of that, because we've got a mem for Ha'adam, the man. It's 1,124 plus 152, very significant number. 1,276, so again it's all connected, isn't it? It's all connected. It's all glorious stuff. Man became a living soul. That's when, he was breathed into. And it's highly connected to, it's all connected to the concept of Mashiach. And then we've got this, haven't we? Because even all those exilic experiences that we've had, that's like the backside, when we're experiencing face to face, but we do experience a lot of our reality where we're subject to exilic forces, whereas we are subject to the backside of holiness, where we're in a place of exile, we're in a place of slavery, we're serving things other than the name YHWH, or we're serving YHWH but in a very hidden way, because only ultimately his will is accomplished. Whether we choose to do good or choose to do evil, we'll still only fulfill his will, and only his will be fulfilled. But how we come about that, when we're all subject to exile, and we're all subject to that confusion, and we're all subject to that backside of reality where things look pretty horrendous. They certainly don't look like YHWH face to face. We're in a place of sickness, and we're in a place where we need to rectify ourselves and go through that healing process and climb and ascend that ladder that burns our hands as we're getting from hell up to heaven. We experience both front face-to-face experiences, but we do experience those back-to-back experiences. We do get a lot of knocks along the way, but front and back, you have formed me. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. We are formed both front and back, so we are formed from all the good experiences that we can clearly identify that this is YHWH revealed in our lives, but we're also formed from all the shadow backside experiences that we experience where it just looks like God has hidden his face from us and permanently exiled us from his presence. That forms us as well, and nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted. All of that makes us the person that we ultimately become. When we reach the top of the ladder and we're looking at the Yeshua Sar HaPanim face to face, and that is radiating to us the love of YHWH back at us, guess what? It doesn't matter that we've been formed front and back. In fact, we appreciate it because we've been formed front and back. It's not just all like roses round the cottage door. We have suffered and we have earned the right to see his face to face, because that ladder was not easy to ascend. Not one rung of it was easy to ascend. I don't know about you, but I don't know how many times you've gone up a few steps and back down a few more. So it's all part of the experience, and it's all what really brings glory to his name ultimately. And the fact that we've toiled so hard in order to reach that place, and we all will get to that top of the ladder, because it's the will of YHWH that we do. When we finally get there, it's not that we've had it handed to us on a plate, is it? We've had to really go through the mill. We've had to really focus our minds. And even things like going through healing process and attending psychology sessions and stuff like that used to whack me out for a fortnight. I used to have to, literally some of the things that were confronting and having to confront and go, I was thinking, I'm just like I just had nothing left. It used to whack me out. I had no motivation. I might as well just stayed at a blank wall for a fortnight. And over time I got better and I got able to bounce back quicker. But some of those rungs on the ladder, when you are in a really, really dark place, those rungs on the ladder can be, the closer you are to the bottom, the hotter the rung on the ladder is, and you can feel like you're a long time grabbed hold of that ladder. Don't give up, because you will get up that next rung, and you will get up that next rung. But we have certainly been formed front and back, and all of humanity has, and that's why all of humanity will be rewarded in the end. And then we've got this male and female. We've got Yeshua filled to the second filling. That's the regular and that's the ordinal. So we can see together they come to 1,666. This is a really significant number, because obviously when you see 666, when you're a Christian, you think, the mark of the beast and stuff like that. And really they're always opposite everything holy. There's something extremely unholy. So opposite some of the most holy things, you will always find the greatest level of unholiness. We'll get to the number 666 soon. This number also relates to it came to pass at the end of 2 full years. This is the time Yeshua, Moshiach ben Yosef, is suffering with us in exile in order to help us accomplish that healing, get up that ladder, return ourselves to a place of face-to-face with YHWH from the depth of exile, however far down on that ladder that we were, however we were subject to the forces of exile, all the perversion and all the impurity and all the filth and depravity and everything else, and all the lust and all the greed and all the thieving, all the, we've been subject to a lot of very vile, impure spiritual realities, and we have to not only survive those, learn how to thrive as a consequence of that experience. It came to pass at the end of 2 full years, he has been with us in this exile, every step of the way, that Pharaoh was dreaming, and behold, so after he'd got to the end of the 2 years, then we know that Joseph was redeemed from this pit, and we will be redeemed with him if we're attached to him. So Yeshua is there, is the whole concept. He is the whole concept of this male and female divine, because really he represents the masculine divine, and those who are believers in him are the feminine divine, aren't they? And it's very much synonymous with Yisrael and YHWH. It's just another level of appreciating that relationship. Okay. Then we've got Moshe. So I said everything unholy. So you've got the mark of the beast 666. You've got a holy counterpart force to that is Moshe. Moshe filled out is 666. Okay, 1000 is the concept of the Mashiach, because you've got Mashiach ben Yosef 434 plus Mashiach ben Yosef 566 plus Mashiach ben Dawid 434, together they come to 1,000, and that's also like the 1,000 lights of Bina that shone from Moshe's face. So YHWH made one opposite the other. So opposite what we would call the mark of the beast is Moshe, who is the concept of Mashiach. He was the first Mashiach and he will be the last Mashiach. Yeshua was an incarnation of Moshe. Talk about this a lot. And then you shall not desecrate my holy name. So when we desecrate Yeshua, who is blessed is he who comes in the name of YHWH, is at the top of the ladder, we desecrate the holy name of YHWH himself. And obviously we can see there's a connection there to Moshe as well. But certainly to Yeshua, who is his name face to face. And then we've got this concept, we've got the 295 is the ordinal for the 5 books of Torah. Bereshith, Shemoth, Vayikra, Bamidbar and Devarim. That's a significant number also. Let's go and have a look. Again, back to Yeshua. So this is Yeshua filled, but this is Yeshua filled where the nun is missing a vav, i.e. is missing the truth, because it's like the luminaries written in the Torah missing the letter Vavs. When YHWH wrote the Torah, he wrote the word for luminaries defective. It's missing 2 Vavs. And so this is a Vav missing out of the nun, because even within the books of Torah, the truth is hidden. We have to toil to reveal the truth from the earth. The truth sprouts from the earth. Okay, and we've got to toil very hard at times to reveal that and battle some of the major forces like Amalek in order to defeat Amalek in order to reveal it. So missing Vav in the nun. So 1,334 regular, which is 2 times 667. So 667 is the average of the books of Torah, the 5 books of Torah, the ordinal and the regular average. So there's a connection there. The sea saw and fled. What did the sea saw and flee? He saw the coffin of Yosef, the bones of Yosef that we've talked about. That's according to the teachings of the sages. So we've got the Mispah Gadol and the regular added together come to 1,334. So as we can see, this is all connected. And we're wanting to experience that same redemption so we can pass on the ground dry shod, where the land is dry. Something else just came to me then. Can't remember what inspiration it was. The seesaw and fled. Oh yeah, why did the seesaw and fled? Because there were two arks. There was the Ark of the Covenant with them. No, was there at this point? It was, there was the concept of the two arks at the seesaw and fled. Can't quite remember. I've done some teachings on this. I better just slow down now. Basically, the sea saw the ark of Yosef. However, it talks about the two arks. Obviously, at this point, there weren't two arks because they hadn't been given the Torah. They were just fleeing from Mitzrayim. But there is mention about the two arks during the time that they were in the wilderness. Obviously, once they did get over the Red Sea or the Sea of Reeds, the Yam Suf, and then they did receive the Torah, and then they did get the opportunity to build up the tabernacle in the wilderness and make what was called the Ark of the Covenant. Joseph was in one ark, and then there was his bones was in his ark, and then there was the Ark of the Covenant, and they travelled together, or the Ark of Testimony. They travelled together, and the rabbi said the one in this ark fulfilled all that was written in the other ark, i.e. on the stone tablets that Moshe brought down from heaven. So there is that as well. Moshe, what does that really mean? It means that he perfectly imitated the name of YHWH, because ultimately the Torah is to bring about a revelation of the name YHWH. So he never fulfilled all the commandments of Torah. He even lived in Mitzrayim. But what it really means is that he bore witness to that name. His life was an expression of the name YHWH and glorified the name YHWH. He did not desecrate his holy name. He perfectly kept it, and so too Yeshua. He's the perfect example of someone who keeps the entire Torah. Okay? Through the way that he imitates the name YHWH and his compassion and his truth and his forgiveness and his grace and everything like that. Then we've got Emeth, Wehmeth and truth, Ha'emeth, the truth. If we add the regulars up of all those, it comes to 1,334. So we can see it really is the truth that's missing, and we've got to toil to reveal the truth. We've got to toil to reveal the truth. And sometimes that the truth is revealed, the more healed we become, the more powerful we are to be able to reveal that truth. Okay. And Enoch walked with God and he was no longer. So this is Metatron, isn't it? He became Metatron. That's the ladder that we've got to get up. And when I first started on searching about Metatron, I've had to learn a lot about Metatron, and you'll see there's been changes in the way that I've understood Metatron in the different teachings that I've done. The more I've examined it, the more I've thought about it as like a necessary evil. Okay, when we're in Metatronic consciousness and we've got to do this in order to please God, and we've got to not do this in order to not receive punishments, and we feel like we've been so whipped up by this exile that we sometimes are confused in all of it. It's a horrific, when we're on that ladder and we're not truly conscious of the name YHWH, because we're getting tossed and turned from one side to the other, and it's a painful experience until we're healed, until we got strong enough to get up to the higher levels. Metatron is, he can be like, there's two aspects to him. He either appears to us as the angel of God, or the rod that turns into the serpent and bites us hard. So obviously he's like, on the one hand he's like Michael, the guardian angel, and on the other hand he's like Samael, the accuser. So, you know, I've experienced quite a lot of the other side. I've experienced a lot of the Samael side of it. So my understanding of Metatron is like, no, I don't want to be anywhere under him whatsoever. I want to get to the top of the mountain and stay there, because I've had enough suffering. I've suffered enough, and I had to go through this painful rectification and healing, and it wasn't pleasant. So I've changed in the way that I've viewed Metatron. But the further I get towards that healing, the more I realise that without it I couldn't have ascended, and that's been part of the whole process of healing, to go through those to go through all those experiences, to be formed front and back, in order for you to really truly know that there's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. Because he designed the ladder, he set up every rung, and he was with us every step of the way, you know. And he sent his son to suffer with us all them slings and arrows of outrageous fortunes. Okay, I've decided I'm actually going to end it there now. So we've gone through a lot, and I've talked about a lot, and I think there's a lot that's been helpful. There's loads of really, really wonderful stuff still to go through, and we haven't even looked at the gematria to do with the actual prayer that's in the machzor of Rosh HaShanah at the blowing of the Shofar. So all these things are really wonderful things. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, really, literally, I had about another 6 slides that we're going to work through, and I just had to check on the time and realise there's not time for that. So if you want more of these teachings, you really want to go into depth in this concept of Yeshua Sar HaPanim, subscribe. And don't forget to share the videos to light up the world with this good news. Shalom.